straight on everything from prepping to politics.
I give a damn about my reputation. Living in the past, it's a new generation. Don't do what you want to do, and that's what I'm gonna do.
Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Wasatch Report. My name is Suzanne Sherman. I'm your host, and you've tuned into the Cerberus Radio Network, where we defend freedom and liberty from the flames of tyranny. Today is Monday, January 29th, year of our Lord, 2018. We do have a live number. We are live if you want to call in, 717-467-1736. You can follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/Cerberus Radio Network. We have a fan page as well, facebook.com/CRN. And you can follow me as well there. Send me some private messages while I'm live. I do respond to them and answer them. I appreciate the feedback. Facebook.com/Cowgirl Esquire. Also, I do participate in Twitter on occasion, and you can find me there at Cowgirl Esquire. We have a YouTube channel, Cerberus Radio Network. Please subscribe. Our numbers are growing. That's very encouraging. You will get email notifications when we're going live, and you can download any show and watch at your leisure on YouTube. We are working on an RSS feed, but in the meantime, you can tune into Cerberus Radio Network. We have an app on Android platform, and you can log into that, get on our radio.co feed and listen to our other shows. Jeff Johnson was live just before me today. He has a show called The Paradigm Shift, and he does double duty over here. He also produces my show. So if you like what you're hearing, give him a big thank you, because if he was not producing this show, I would not be on the air. So Jeff Johnson, thank you very much. Jeff Johnson and the other founder of the network, Daniel Bailey, have a show they do together, the Renegade and the Rambler radio show. Daniel Bailey has his show also called the Bailey Report. We also have a show that comes out of the Tucson, Arizona area called Brush Fires of Freedom, hosted by Sean Hoffheim. You will love him. We have Mike Meharry, who is the National Communications Director of the 10th Amendment Center. We have some of his podcasts in the queue, as well as some that he does with Peter Schiff Gold podcast. So if you're interested in learning about the practicality of investing in gold, whether or not it's right for you, it's a great resource. Jeff, you and I talk about reasons for preparedness, and as we all know, we are operating under a system of fiat currency. It's backed by nothing. It can't go on. We're $22 trillion in debt at this point. That doesn't include the 220 plus trillion in unfunded liabilities come down the pike. We're going to have to pay the price at some point. So best to be prepared. Also delighted to announce that we have a new show. We have new talent that has joined us on this network. We have a show called The Other Side. Justin and Michael are high school teachers, and they are teaching kids what they should be learning. They are very informed when it comes to the actual history of the United States of America. When we had our first little online conference, they held up Kevin Gutzman's book, Thomas Jefferson Revolutionary, A Radical Struggle to Remake America. So it is very inspiring and encouraging to know that there are school teachers out there speaking the truth. Our show, our network is family friendly. So please do not feel that your children cannot learn from this network as well. If anybody's going to blow it in that regards, it's going to be me. And so far I've been doing a good job on keeping it family friendly. So I will also be doing a podcast. I'll be joining Justin and Michael on, I believe, Wednesday evening, and that will be available for you. We're going to talk about preparedness. They wanted to have a show on introducing their listeners to the preparedness lifestyle, the reason to prepare. A couple weeks ago, I think I mentioned it, I had a listener say that when I was back on the Veritas Radio Network, my show, The Suzanne Option, is what inspired this gentleman and his wife to become prepared for emergencies. And it doesn't have to be a doomsday style scenario, societal collapse. You know, you can choose your level of preparedness. Do you just want to have some food on hand, some supplies in the event that you live in an area where you're subject to any kind of a natural calamity, be it an ice storm or a hurricane? What I've talked about before, Dr. Arthur T. Bradley, the author of the Handbook of Disaster Preparedness for the Family, says we live on the most dangerous land mass. These United States, this nation, the most dangerous continental landmass on the planet with regards to weather itself. So these are things I need to think about. When I lived in California, I lived in San Martin, and when I was there, we had some people shoot transformers at the local state power station, and at the same time, they severed the fiber optics cord, disabling the 911 capabilities, so the emergency service capabilities, and that was done in Gilroy. So this was simultaneously, I think it was a test. We need to be prepared for something like this. Calamities can also be personal. You can have illness in a family or loss of a job, and wouldn't it be nice to know that you had some supplies on hand? So again, this is something that we go back to on our show. I also want to thank Paul Jensen and his producer, Jason Anderson, over on K-Talk Media. They have a show, a morning show on the news. It's called Inside the News, and they are on K-Talk Radio in the Sandy area, and I'm on his show looking like once a week on Tuesday. So it's an opportunity. Paul Jensen is very generous about announcing our network and our show and getting listeners over from there to tune into our show. Yes, we have a time conflict, but the great thing about now with the internet and people like us having an opportunity to weigh in, you can download our shows. So if you want to listen to Paul live, call in live with them, just tune in here. Check us out later when it's convenient for you. We appreciate it. I know some people have added me as a Facebook friend and are chiming in and sending me messages. So it's really encouraging to know we can get this message out there because Jeff, as you know, Jeff Johnson, my producer, a lot of people are not discussing the analysis. They're not analyzing the political situation, current events, the way we are. You know, we used to say, and we need to bring this up and remind our listeners, 18th century ideas for 21st century thinkers. What was discussed, the way things were analyzed back then, the proper role in government is still applicable today. You've been discussing Patrick Henry. You've been discussing Brutus. I'm going to talk today a lot. I've been thinking, I missed my show Friday, 10 minutes before we were supposed to start. I got called out to do an elk hunt. My hunt was successful, so I have some meat going in the freezer for my family. But, that last weekend, over the weekend, I've been really thinking a lot about how we as a people, society, tend to embrace tyranny. Our founding generation put their lives on the line to free ourselves from the shackles of tyranny. And today, as a society, we embrace it. Let me give you a little example. I was at the gym. When I go to my gym, before our classes start, we all sit around and talk a little bit. And one lady, I forgot how the subject came up, probably because of the incident in Hawaii, had said, if something really bad happened, I hope I just die. I don't want to be here for it. And I thought, my goodness, have we become so weak that if we are going to have a struggle, we would rather just die? And I'm kind of smirking, and I think they think I'm crazy because I just said, you want to die? I'm living for that. I can't wait. I want to live like they did back when this union had its origins. Yes, life was more difficult, but there was this mindset that people worked for what they wanted. And this goes back to the proper role of government. Is it the proper role to defend freedom, or is it the proper role to perform these services that everybody seems to be demanding now? Case in point, did you ever think that we would have a system of government where the primary focus, the center of the debate, focuses on how we are going to treat people that are not Americans? This was one of the central topics of the last cycle of the presidential debates. And it just boggles my mind. When did the American citizens' concerns become subservient to those that are here as lawbreakers? And that's what they are. They are here unlawfully. And as for DACA, well, we don't want to punish children for the acts of their parents, but let's look at the inconsistency of this argument for a moment, and then we're going to get on to some of the things I wanted to talk about in the show. Abortion. I'm going to fight to save some babies. For instance, I'm against abortion, except in cases of rape or incest. Well, once again now, are we not in those situations punishing a child for the act of its father? Yes. Yes, we are. The case of incest, we're punishing a child for the acts of both parents. Now, we don't know if it's, voluntary or involuntary, but once again, we're being inconsistent in this message. We are to the tune of almost 60 million babies practicing a policy when we are punishing the baby for the acts of the parents. But we don't want to hold this consistent because why? Because these people that are here illegally, the people that are subject to DACA, are one day going to vote, and they're going to vote overwhelmingly Democrat. So we're very inconsistent in this virtuous behavior, particularly that the left is extolling upon us. I want to do a little bit of an update here. Also, an announcement, I think I mentioned it earlier, I will be on Paul Jensen's show tomorrow morning. So something I wanted to touch on, a while back, we had an incident out here in Utah where a nurse was subject to arrest because of her standing in the way of a law enforcement official. And this was a case when Nurse Hubble, and I'm going to find that article right now. But anyway, Salt Lake Tribune is reporting, and this was an article from last week, that Utah lawmakers are voting now. They have voted to prevent the blood draw showdowns like the one that led to Nurse Hubble's arrest. Jeff, I believe we played that on the air with this woman screaming, and this was really a result of a detective pretty much being fed up with somebody standing in the way of what he was trying to do, which was draw blood contrary to a patient's legal rights. Just a quick backup. There was a fiery truck crash. An individual was trying to elude police in northern Utah, and the decedent had actually crossed the lane. He died on impact and hit a semi-truck. The driver of the truck, who later succumbed to his injuries, was in the University of Utah hospital in the burn unit, and he was unconscious. And Nurse Hubble tried to intervene and say, no, we have certain policies in order. And the officer, the detective who was from the blood draw unit, now I believe that's really draconian, where law enforcement has a unit where they can draw blood from crime, people suspected of crimes. And this individual in the truck was not suspected of committing a crime. He was a patient. He was actually a victim of the crime. So anyway, let me go back to the article. Utah House passed the bill Thursday aimed at preventing future confrontations like we had last year. And this actually caused an uproar. And the thing to me is that this was kept quiet until the video was released. The mayor knew about this. The chief of police knew what happened. Nothing had been done. House Bill 43 outlines when law enforcement may legally obtain blood draws. This passed on a 72-0 vote and was sent to the Senate. I don't think anyone believes here that what happened that day was acceptable. This is according to the bill's sponsor, Representative Craig Hall out of West Valley City. And this was all about the arrest of Nurse Hubble on the 26th. I believe I called her Hubble, I'm sorry. So a lot of things went wrong that day, and the bill makes clear that police may obtain a blood draw only if one of three conditions were met. Now, remember, before, this was hospital policy, and also none of these had been met. Now, the hospital changed its policy after this arrest, where they said no more now will law enforcement interact with the nurses and staff directly. They'll have to deal with the administration. If anybody was watching this this incident as it was recorded. She had an administrator on the phone who was trying to talk some sense into this detective, and there was no meeting with him. He was not going to listen to reason at all. So this bill makes clear that police may obtain a blood draw only if one of three conditions are met, and that is they have written or oral consent from the patient, they obtain a warrant, or there is a judicially recognized exception to the warrant. And I believe what they tried to say was exigent circumstances, meaning that there was an immediate risk of loss to any evidence they were trying to retrieve at the time, which was clearly not applicable as the patient was unconscious and was going nowhere. So we have a time when electronic warrants are available, and that really gets around the exigency requirement. There's no reason not to get a warrant. The bill is consistent with Salt Lake City's revised policy, supported by the Highway Patrol and the ACLU and Wubble's attorney. Because remember, last year she filed a $500,000 lawsuit, and there was a payment now of $500,000 to settle the dispute with the city over her arrest. Detective Jeff Payne, who was the arresting officer, was fired. And I, living in this area, have friends who know through mutual friends this officer, and this was not the first time that he was in trouble. So I'm pleased that there has been some sort of rectification of this matter as well. And Jeff, when we were talking last week, I wanted to start last Friday's show off with also a discussion you had, and this kind of goes back to being prepared as well. You had an incident out in your county near the prison where you work, and it involved a home invasion with armed perpetrators. And it really underscores our need to be prepared. Do you want to share a little bit about what happened out there? And we'll talk about that briefly.
Well, there was a home invasion just across town from where the prison I work at is. And three youths, late teens, maybe 20s. I don't know that the article even said their ages. I'm pretty sure one of them was 18-ish. The one that they were looking for. They finally captured the third suspect. They dropped the three suspects, broke into a house. There was a struggle. The homeowner, as it turns out, what I'm hearing now, the article was kind of vague on who it was a retired New York State corrections officer. So he was prior law enforcement. And this had this was 2 houses down from one of the Chemung County DA, his residence. One of the DAs lives 2 houses down. So this is, that's what I'm getting, because there was a bunch of rumor out there that this was a drug-related home invasion. Unless there was something more to this than I know, I'm not thinking it was, just based on who's involved. But the homeowner ended up shooting one of them in the hip with a shotgun. And the other 2 dropped him at the local emergency room, and they took off. They caught up with the one. The one was at large for a few more days, and they finally caught up with that one. So you, even in your house, again, right now, I'm sitting here on the radio. On my right hip is a 9mm XD subcompact. Sitting in my house, people say, oh, you're just out of your mind. Well, was that guy out of his mind when people invaded his home? I think not. Had he had a pistol on him, he might have been able, instead of a struggle to get away from them to get to a shotgun, maybe it would have been different. Maybe it would have ended sooner. But
well, and
that's
and
being
here's
prepared.
the thing too. Like when I first had my kids, I was afraid of having a firearm in the house. I mean, I have really come and done an about face. It took a lot to overcome the indoctrination that you get, in particularly the California lifestyle where guns are dangerous. This is hammered down your throat early on in the schools, and on the news, that's all you hear. But once I decided to have a firearm, I realized the safest place to have a firearm, if you're going to have it in the house, is on your person. And then if you have others that are locked up, again, if you have small children, that's responsible. But if you're going to have one on you, home invasions are a very real thing. And one of these situations that really changed my way of thinking was a tragic story that happened in Connecticut. And I bet you're familiar with it. A family was subjected to a home invasion. A father was home as well. the mother and two young, beautiful girls. And the perpetrator did horrific things to the family. I believe they all passed. The father was the only survivor. Here's the other thing, too. Not only was he not prepared to protect his family, the mother, and I believe one of the other daughters, was forced to go to an ATM and get money out of the bank at gunpoint from this gentleman. I had done a show on the other network, and I'm going to try and find it, with Larry Mudgett. He's actually a firearms instructor. He and his wife, Stacy Mudgett, own a school out here in the Provo area called Marksmanship Matters. It's actually a personal defense school. And we talked about an article that they had written. I think I'll have to post that again, called Surrender is Never an Option. These people had surrendered, and you just never want to give up in a situation like that. So we'll be talking more about that as well. But Utah even is reiterating in its Stand Your Ground law that you do not have to refrain from using lethal force if you're presented with a situation that is inherently dangerous, if there is an opportunity to escape. You know, we have a lot of these leftists and the family members of these perpetrators. Oh, it just wasn't fair. My son was shot trying to rob a store or burglarize a house. That's just not fair. No, what's not fair is people having to be victimized because these people think that they're somehow entitled to take what they want from you or others and not have to suffer the consequences. So as we know, when I used to teach personal protection classes, was that you're justified in using lethal force if you are operating under a fear of imminent and immediate serious bodily injury or death. And that's to yourself or others. And this is subject to the reasonable person test. Would a reasonable person under same or similar circumstances feel that their life was in imminent peril? So that is the case. You should not have to have a duty to retreat. This is part of natural law. What is natural law? You have a right to defend yourself. But people seem to think that we need to get this freedom somehow from the government itself. We had a couple videos that we were going to play so our listeners could hear them. What was the first one we're going to start with, Jeff?
It was the one from NBC News on the textilizer.
Okay. Well, here's another issue.
The second one was resist, or I can do it the other way around. You tell me which order you'd like it in, and I will do that.
All right. Yeah, I want to focus on a issue out here in Utah. We're having a bit of propaganda. As we know, there is a movement now, just like Mothers Against MAD took off, Mothers Against Drug Drivers took off to prevent drunk driving. Clearly, drunk driving deaths are absolutely tragic. But at what point do you draw the line from draconian government interference in our lives and the noble goal of trying to protect lives? Out here in Utah, we recently adopted a 0.05 tolerance, the lowest in this union. The problem is this 0.05 presumption that you are under the influence of alcohol was adopted legislatively without any evidence to support the need for it. So there was no statistics to say, well, 0.08 is still too dangerous. We have a lot of fatalities due to 0.05, 0.06, 0.07. What they're really going for here, and I think you know where I'm going with, Jeff, is this is a moneymaker. If you drive along Interstate 80, I have a radar detector. You're crazy if you don't. We have a lot of highways out here. And these guys know where to hide. They hide at these hills. They hide on, where they know that you're not going to see them until it's too late. And if you can get somebody for speeding and then get them for 0.05, 0.06, 0.07, you're going to bring in a lot more money to the state than you are for just a speeding ticket. Idaho was very clever in an ad campaign right after this came off with regards to tourism. It said, Utah, go on vacation, come home on probation, visit Idaho. Does this mean our highways are more dangerous? No, absolutely not. So now distracted driving has become the new, the new program agenda to restrict our rights. Well, clearly, and you hear these people arguing, I know somebody that was killed by somebody texting and driving, and we have this anecdotal evidence. We already have laws on the books for negligent driving. It's already there. You have to look, and you're going to understand this when we play these videos. Look at who is behind this legislation and who is going to profit from it. We have laws, again, like I said, negligence laws. If you hit somebody while you're texting and driving and they can show that you did, you're going to be liable for damages, and you're going to have to pay a fine also on your your vehicle record. So we have a campaign right now, and listen to the language they use and tell me if it sounds familiar, this word that they're using on a national level. Why don't you go ahead and play it, Jeff?
Now, this new device called the Textilizer is aiming to crack
That's
down,
not the one.
recording your every click, tap, or swipe. It would even know what apps you were using. Police officers could download the data right on the spot. Okay, here we
Which one were you looking for, Suzanne?
I'm looking for the resist one.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. I thought we were
okay.
Starting with Textilizer.
Sorry, that's all right. Let's start with resist.
Okay, here we come. It'll come right now. Hold on. Here it is.
Thank you.
Resist. Resiste.
Resist.
This is not a political movement.
It's a matter of life and death.
Utahns need to resist the urge to drive distracted.
Don't use one of these behind the wheel.
Just don't use it.
Just don't.
Don't do anything that distracts you from driving.
Join the resistance.
Join us.
Join us. And together we can resist driving distracted.
Well, doesn't that just sound warm and cozy? This is not a political movement. It's a matter of life and death. Notice also resiste. Also, notice the term resist. Jeff, where else are we hearing this term resist? We are hearing this from the leftists against anything and everything Donald Trump is proposing. This resistance is really a leftist movement, a movement that is geared toward bigger government and more control. And look at the language they also use. This is not political. It's a matter of life and death. The Affordable Care Act. This is a matter of life and death. Health care is a civil right. These people are being denied. I heard this in California. Drug addicts are being denied the services they need. Ladies and gentlemen, go back to what is the proper role of government. It is to defend liberty. Now, if you listen, and this was something that I had heard about a year or two ago in California, when I was out there visiting, this was on all the news, and everybody was cheering this device. Oftentimes, now, behind the texting and driving movement, you have companies, individuals that are creating these products for hands-free use on the phone. Do you think these individuals are reaching out to politicians, legislators, to create laws to prohibit the use of the standard equipment that we have today? Of course they are. Like I say all the time, follow the money. Now we'll play the Textilizer clip and you'll see how this ties together. Go ahead, Jeff.
New device called the Textilizer is aiming to crack down, recording your every click, tap, or swipe. It would even know what apps you were using. Police officers could download the data right on the spot.
Okay, here we go.
To see how it works, I start driving in a closed parking lot. First up, I send a message on WhatsApp.
How are you?
I check out Facebook.
One of my favorites.
I even answer a call.
Hello.
And send a text message too.
Hi. How is it going? Sent.
I pull over and we plug in the Textilizer.
Phone data is being analyzed.
All right.
I can see that you opened WhatsApp at 2:45. There were several Facebook activity. You received an incoming call at 2:59, and you sent an SMS at 3 o'clock.
So police could pinpoint down to you were driving then, and that was a minute before the accident.
Yes, and that's very important.
But privacy advocates say it's just too intrusive.
There's no guarantee when you hand your cell phone over to a police officer that officer won't be looking at or copying all kinds of personal data about you.
When we talk to the critics, we explain we're not getting anything about what was said in the text or who it was said to, just the touches and swipes.
Police can't use it yet, but lawmakers in several states want to pass legislation to allow the textilizer, hitting you with penalties if you refuse to give up your phone. Jeff Rawson, NBC News, Parsippany, New Jersey.
Well, I think this should make sense now. We have a product, a little bit of technology, and they want to make it so that you will be forced to hand over your phone in the event that you're pulled over. Now, they say we want to be allowed to use the textilizer, but wait until, like the roadside sobriety tests, it becomes mandatory. Is there going to be any limitation on when they can do this? Well, what if they get you for a faulty blinker? When I was practicing criminal law in California, do you know how many DUI cases I had clients that were pulled over not because they were driving erratically, not because they'd caused an accident, but because of a faulty blinker. Well, you are required, or you will surrender your license, to submit to roadside sobriety checks if you're pulled over, or you're going to surrender your license. It's going to happen with the textilizer. Mark my words. And again, the people that I referred to earlier who embrace tyranny, well, this is a great idea because if you're not using your phone, you have nothing to hide. Kind of reminds me of the Patriot Act. If you've got nothing to hide, why do you have a problem with this? And look what's happened now. Look at the data. Look at the NSA. Every bit of information, everything we do electronically is stored. Yet, when we have proof of criminal behavior, when it's part of our oligarchy, our chosen ones, it doesn't apply to them. All these texts, emails, proving criminal conduct, the Clinton crime syndicate, the FBI, emails go missing. Yet, we're going to be expected to surrender our telephones because this is a matter of life or death. If you really think that this is freedom and that we need to surrender this under safety, you know what? You can be one of those that wants to just curl up and die when tough times happen because you don't understand how important freedom can really be to you until it's gone. Jeff, what are your thoughts on this? I know you're an EMT. I know you've seen the carnage of people not paying attention to driving. Where do we draw the line between, now we're not going to do a break, where do we draw the line between safety and tyranny? How much crime can we prevent and at what cost?
Well, again, I'm going to go back. I'm going to read that sentence that I did from my show to begin my discussion of Patrick Henry. I would, with manly firm. Oh, okay. There was that one quote. You are not to inquire how your trade may be increased, nor how you are to become a great and powerful people, but how your liberties can be secured. For liberty ought to be the direct end of your government. Okay, liberty can be messy. Does that mean that we have to give up liberty to be safe? I would say that Patrick Henry would be absolutely against something like this. Now, there's a law. If you cause an accident because you were texting, there are negligent laws, as you said, already on the books. Do we have to give up liberty to affect safety in everything we do? Can we negate every possible bad outcome in life by giving up liberty? I say no.
Yeah, and this is the point. We have this government, we turn towards government at all levels to regulate our lives, to keep us safe, to keep bad things from happening. And, you know, and people are okay with it. Here's another one. I'm going to talk about this. This is a case in Utah. What I'm going to do is just introduce this concept of the proper role in government and give you examples of legislation that comes in. And this is also the problem I see with full-time elected legislators. What do they have to do as each new official sits down and takes office? Well, I better come up with some laws. What I would like to see is people coming in and saying, you know what, let's get rid of laws that we don't need, because this is just going to keep going in perpetuity. As long as we have legislators, we're going to get new laws. I am encouraged, and the stock market is responding, by the way, in the deregulation that Donald Trump has ordered in his administration. I believe for every law they pass, they're required to remove 16 or 20. But here's an example. Let me give you out of Utah. The Salt Lake Tribune is discussing a bill legalizing free-range parenting. They're legalizing it. Now, remember, a while back, Mike Lee had proposed letting up on a law that would not, a federal law saying the federal government cannot impose upon parents who are letting their kids go back and forth to school. As we know, this is a state issue. So this is coming out of the Salt Lake Tribune, beg your pardon. Free-range parenting is a modern buzzword for essentially, Jeff, doing what we used to do when we were growing up, for families aiming to raise self-sufficient kids. But how much freedom and at what age remains a debate, a fierce debate. So this is what they're saying. How much freedom parents are allowed to have is literally up for debate. A Utah lawmaker wants to make sure moms and dads don't find themselves under investigation for allowing mature kids with good judgment to do things alone, such as travel to school, explore a playground, or stay in their parents' car. Jeff, I did all these things when I was a kid. Did you do this?
Oh, I posted a meme the other day. I don't know if you saw it. I mean, I've seen them a million times, but of the kid jumping off a ramp over a kid that's laying on the ground. We did all manner of stupid things growing up. And you know what? We survived it.
Yep. Panel of state lawmakers unanimously approved the proposal on Tuesday, advancing it to the full Senate for a vote. The plan is from Senator Lincoln Fillmore, would revise state law to say it isn't neglect to let children do those things alone if they are otherwise well cared for. I like how they put the term in otherwise. It's like we're going to grant them these indiscretions if your kids aren't starving or otherwise abused. So they said allowing kids to try things alone helps prepare them for the future. Duh. We become so helicopterish as parents and as a society expecting parents to be that way that we are kind of robbing children of some of the joys of childhood. You know, when I was in school, we didn't have parents counseling us as volunteers out on the schoolyard, telling us how to play together. This is what I'm hearing is happening now. And you know what? We had our brawls. We had our fist fights. We settled matters, and it all worked out. We survived. Some question whether this measure is needed. Well, you know what? I'll tell you why it's needed, because we have these legislators that cannot mind their own damn business, who think they need to impose these regulations on us. Again, tell me how mandating I must drive my children to school, or I must surrender my children to the state until the age of 18 to attend compulsory school owned by the government, is in any way respective of natural law and our freedoms right now. And so what they do is they come up with these laws that take our freedom away, and then they become our benefactors when they divvy out our freedoms as they see fit. And people seem to embrace this. They're okay with it. Not me. California, I homeschooled my kids. I pulled them out of school, private school, when they were in junior kindergarten and second grade. And then I put them, because I didn't have the confidence to do it completely on my own. I put them in a state K-12 program. It was a homeschooling program, but it was through the state, and we worked with the teacher. Well, I'd had enough of that after about 6 months. And when I left, the teacher said, okay, well, thank you. And I've submitted your name to the school district. I said, what the hell are you talking about? You submitted my name and my children's name. Oh, well, they need to know who the kids are. You know, she essentially turned us in for leaving her school and trying to do this on her own. Did I ever register with the state of California in the Santa Clara County School District? No, I did not. I did everything under the radar. I thumb my nose at laws like this. Anyway, let me get back to the article. Right now, parents have had pretty much all the liberty they need to parent as they see fit. If such a law isn't worded carefully, it could become a defense for parents in child abuse cases. We want to be careful this doesn't comprise our ability as prosecutors to hold abusive accountable. He said this proposal addresses those concerns by specifying that kids must be mature enough to take on the activities without hurting themselves. Okay, so Jeff, I let my kid ride his bike to school, or let's say they do what in that meme that you showed, they jump over other kids on their bike, or the kid gets hurt, they fall off their bike. I fell off my bike on my way to school. Does that mean my parents were neglectful because I fell off my bike on my way to school? Happens all the time. Where do you draw the line in the state being your child's unwanted babysitter and letting you grow up the way kids should? Parents have been investigated, going back to the article, and some saw their children temporarily removed after people reported children doing things. Oh, wait, this is bad. Okay. You know, take away everything I said. We need the nanny state, because look, they saw people playing basketball in their yards or walking to school alone. Oh, the humanity. Democratic Senator Luz Esquimela said she's glad, of course she is, people report unsupervised children, though she acknowledged the official responses may have been overzealous. I don't think there is an overzealous nanny state reaction any Democrat has ever disliked. The founder of the free range movement said that if Utah passes the law, it would be the first in the country. Is this insane that we need a law to let parents raise their children in the manner that we were raised? I mean, we roamed our neighborhoods, Jeff. We went to creeks and swam in swimming holes. You know, we played games of war. Try and do that now. We were kids. Kids can't be kids anymore. Does that maybe tell us why we have this generation of these useless millennials that need the government for everything they do? Sum it up in 2 words: pajama boy. Any thoughts on that, Jeff?
It is amazing. When I was in elementary school, I lived on 15th Street. The school was on 20th Street. So I had to walk down to Barnegat Avenue, walk down Barnegat Avenue to 20th Street, then turn up 20th Street, and then walk all the way up to the school. So it wasn't a short walk, but I walked to elementary school. I'm talking elementary school. Yeah. Or I rode my bike to elementary school. We were outside. We'd play out. We'd run the neighborhoods when I was 8 or 9 years old until about 9 o'clock. My mom she had this crazy whistle. She'd blow the whistle, and I knew it was time to go in. It was, you know, I'm sure some people have bells or whatever they did. But yeah, we had a crazy little whistle. Yeah. Then when I was 13, I took my 3-year-old. When I was 13, I'd walk my 3-year-old brother down to the bay. We lived on an island, so the ocean was to the east and the bay was to the west. And so I'd go down to the bay, to the beach down on the end of 15th Street. I'd take him down there unsupervised. My parents wouldn't go. It'd just be me and my little brother. I mean, he's doing fine.
Let me read an article.
Both survived it.
This is outrageous here. Here's an article from the Des Moines Register out of Iowa. Independent private instruction allows Iowa children to, get this, vanish from school and perhaps never learn to read. Do you hear the language they use? Life and death. It's not political. On the surface, the Iowa Department of Education's recommendation to open the state's online learning program to all homeschool K-12 students seems like a reasonable idea. Scratch beneath the surface, and it's a horrible idea. The agency's proposal is targeted at families who have chosen independent private instruction. This option in homeschooling, recently added to Iowa law, allows children to entirely disappear, poof, gone, from every educational grid in this state.
Yeah, see, in Pennsylvania, we have online charter schools here in PA, and
that's what I did in
have
California.
two nieces. We have two. I have a niece that graduated from high school, going through that program, and I have a nephew who's doing it right now. They've homeschooled completely all their children, and they've all done very well.
Why? And you know, we got to go forward with our Agenda 21, Agenda 30 series too. Why do they want the kids in the school to disrupt the role of the families, to disrupt our traditional values? Going back to this article, state school officials should be yelling from the rooftops for the Iowa legislature to repeal independent private instruction. Listen to these words, independent and private. The left hates that. They want to subvert independence. They want to substitute private, individual for collective. That is how they win. So they want to repeal this instruction option, not just modify the laws in ways that accommodate or encourage it. Note, however, these leftists, this is my thoughts, not the article. Note these leftists want all the accommodations for their pet projects, their pet dysfunctional members of society. But people that just want to homeschool their children and be responsible, there are no accommodations for them. They want accommodations for every kind of deviant sexual behavior there is under the sun. But oh my God, don't even think of homeschooling your kid. Traditional homeschooling works well for some families, the article continues. Many children receive a good education from parents and have access to courses, services, and extracurricular activities at a local school. Independent private instruction is an entirely different creature. In other words, don't you dare wander off from the plantation, because we're all slaves now. Yeah. It gives parents permission to keep at home their own children. Jeff, can you imagine keeping your own children at home rather than surrendering to the state? What did Hillary Clinton say? We've got to get to these kids early. This is pure Marxist drivel.
And you know, Suzanne, they totally ignore all the I'm sorry, I'm getting a little feedback on myself here. They're totally ignoring the fact that the studies show that these children exceed what the public school children do. And there's one other thing you were talking earlier. New York State is now looking at allowing 12-year-olds to hunt. And the whole big thing is in the news is, oh, should the state allow 12-year-olds to have a gun? I'm not making that up. That's the big.
No, I'm not surprised at all. You know, out here in Utah, 12-year-olds can qualify for their big game license. And guess what? They don't run up to these deer and shout, boo. They shoot them.
And I posted on that thing about, because one of my friends posted, I said, why in the world are we begging permission from the government for this? It's none of their darn business. And unfortunately, it is their business because it is big money. And so, again, they found a way to steal more of our wealth. And they in public safety again.
Yeah, absolutely. These children are just junior versions of the tax chattel that we all are. A child can, here's the rhetoric they use in this article. A child can suddenly vanish from school, and parents can simply say they're independent or they can say nothing at all if anyone asks, as they damn well should be able to do. These students, obviously that last commentary was mine and not from the article. These students are prohibited from taking any classes or participating in any activities at a local school. Prohibited. They cannot attend math class at a high school. They cannot play on a sports team. Their parents want these kids completely off the radar, and the law now allows it. Now, what is the proper role in government? To preserve, to be the vanguard of our liberties. And these leftists here are absolutely apoplectic at the fact that there's a law that is promoting what the traditional role, the proper role of government should be. The article continues that the Department of Education wants to pre-file legislation related to homeschooling. It should propose nixing independent private instruction. The agency has never done that. Homeschooling families have asked for direct access to these courses, and we support providing it. Our families that went out of the way to avoid formal education system calling the state education department, and if they are, officials should tell them online programming is available if they participate in a homeschooling model that allows a district to know a child exists. A few weeks ago, I discussed an ordinance in a city out here in Utah that required a home-based business that had absolutely no impact on traffic in the community, deliveries, or anything like that, that they have a business license. And when they could not justify this on impact and need for resources to be allocated to their community as a result of this business, they just came out and said it. We need to track what these people are doing. We are nothing more than a resource to government. We need to say enough. I am not your resource. I am your chattel. I am not your chattel. I am a free human being who, according to natural law, does not have to be subjected to what you think and how you think I should be raising my children. Well, they're talking about, here's an example they use, and this is what we always have. We have an anecdotal, unfortunate situation that always justifies what? More government, never less. The author says, has this government official who's advocating independence ever heard of Natalie Finn? This is a West Moines teen who starved to death. She and her siblings, who were hospitalized when discovered, were the subject of numerous reports of child abuse, mostly turned in by school officials, until the children disappeared from class. Once they fell off the radar, they lost them, the Democrat Senator Matt McCoy says to the Register. School officials were informed Natalie was on a self-study course with her parents, and she did not need to report to school. Her sister and brother were also on that track, a self-study course. No reporting to the school. And independent private instruction students are also exempted from state-required, oh no, we can't have this, state-required immunizations, dental screening, and vision checks. So a health professional may never lay eyes on them. Independent private instruction is irresponsible and dangerous. It disregards reams of state education law intended to ensure Iowa children are educated. Kids who cannot pick their parents may never learn to read. They are prohibited from receiving special education services. They may disappear and starve to death. State education leaders should demand the fringe homeschooling option be repealed, not cater to it. Let me ask you this. I wonder if there are statistics available comparing the percentage of homeschooled kids and public school educated children and the crime rates among them. Who's a greater danger to society, in your opinion, Jeff?
Well, I don't know that I've ever seen a study on this, but my guess is the ones that are homeschooled are less dangerous because the families usually instill good family values in these children.
And here's the thing. Again, people seem to embrace this kind of tyranny. And what I talk about all the time is tyranny is at every level of society, from the local homeowners association all the way up to the swamp on Mordor on the Potomac. I'm going to give you an example now. Homeowners Association. This comes out of California. Article in Sacramento Bee. A community is told they must keep their garage doors open or face a $200 fine. A 9-year-old, they actually interviewed, we're not going to play this interview, but they interviewed a 9-year-old who told Fox News 40 that he worries somebody might come and steal one of his favorite possessions. Jeff, we all store stuff in our garages. That is part of our personal property. We can close that door and it is recognized legally as being part of our home. His anxiety stems from a new rule created by his community's homeowners association that mandates residents keep their garage doors open from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. on weekdays or face a $200 fine. And I heard about this and I'm thinking, I cannot come up with any reason for why they would have such a rule, particularly when most people are at work during this time of the day. Kids are in school. We know moms are in the workplace now. So now their homes are less secure because apparently some little dictators on the local HOA want their garage doors open. So why is that? I don't think it's a good idea, says this kid, because they're going to steal my bike. I've got an electric scooter. I've got an electric wheelchair. I've got all kinds of stuff. So I just don't think it's very good to have it open. The HOA plastered the new rules on the doors of residents, warning that those who do not keep their garage doors open face an immediate hearing notice and will be subjected to a $200 fine. Some in the community were not happy with this rule, yeah, you think, expressing concern that will leave them easy targets for would-be thieves. Now, we had a home in Discovery Bay when nobody was out there. And one time, before we had any other homes on that street where we were in that whole part of the community, my dad had left the garage door open. And somebody came in, stole all his tools in broad daylight. If we have to have this open from 8 o'clock in the morning to 4 o'clock in the afternoon, anybody can help themselves and steal you blind. So why did this happen? Well, apparently the rule, which went into effect, was put into place after someone in the community let people live in their garage. A board member told the KCRA news agency, but there's some good news for those opposed to the policy. The professor at McGeorge School of Law predicted that a judge could overturn the policy if they find it threatens the safety of the residents. Of course, there isn't at the time a homeowners association has drawn iron from members of the community because it isn't in accordance with normal Christian Christmas decorations. We see that. But here we have an example of, again, we had people exercising a right to allow somebody to live in their garage. You know, we have zoning ordinances. I would not like to see having people housed in garage situations. So where do we draw the line? Again, the default always seems to be for those in charge at whatever level to always try to ensnare those innocent of any wrongdoing, and to make them be punished for the wrongdoings of a few. So again, what is this? It is very consistent. We substitute the individual and personal responsibility for the collective. We're just going to make this very normal activity now in direct contravention to our homeowners association. We had a lot to cover today, and I'll try and be back, it looks like next week, to go over some more of this stuff. I'm going to be going more into kind of a continuation of the paradigm shift. What Jeff talks about is the traditional role of government. It is applicable to whatever we're seeing in the news today. So I want to thank you for joining me, Jeff Johnson. Thank you for producing the show. And I'm Suzanne Sherman. This has been the Wasatch Report on the Cerberus Radio Network, where we defend freedom and liberty from the flames of tyranny.
Boy, the way Glenn Miller played
Songs that made the hit parade.
guys like us, we had it made.
Those were the days. And you knew who you were then.
Girls were girls and men were men. Mister, we could use a man like Herbert Hoover again. Didn't need no welfare state.
Everybody pulled his weight.
Gee, our old
LaSalle ran great.
Those were the days.